Characters are the lifeblood of gacha games. They bring these games to life by captivating players with their designs, stories, or gameplay. You can easily see this through how some of the most devoted, most active communities within these games are ones just dedicated to singular characters. Genshin Impact is no different from any other gacha game here. The character cast is a huge driving force of why a lot of players still log in every day. But Genshin is running into a slight problem, and the title should have given it away already, but Genshin is running into a problem with how many characters they have in the game now. And no, I'm not saying they should stop releasing new characters. After all, characters, like I said, are still the lifeblood of the games. But there is a problem with how players can actually get these characters. You see, ever since patch 2.4 in January of 2022, Genshin has been following a strict banner structure of 2 limited 5 stars on their own individual banner at a time, with 3 4-star characters being rated up. And this was perfectly fine at that point in the game. In patch 2.4, we had 44 characters in the game, which meant characters could normally get reruns after a reasonable gap, and 4-star characters would rerun every 3 to 4 patches. This is more than 2 years ago. We've just entered Natlan, our 6th region, and with the release of 5.0 already bringing Mualani, Kinich, and Kachina, this is taking us to a total of 88 characters. And if previous regions are anything to go by, every subsequent patch will definitely have at least 1 new limited 5-star, with some potentially even having 2. Now the actual problem at hand here is, well, Genshin isn't changing their banner system, and with new characters being released so often, this means that the time between character reruns for both 4 stars and 5 stars are getting absurdly long. The community really started to pick up on this recently with the whole kaveh incident. Kaveh was first released in version 3.6, which was back in May of 2023. For almost the entirety of this year, I saw posts in the community asking for his rerun, which seemingly just never showed up. It got so bad that people started thinking Hoyo straight up removed him, since he had this insanely game-breaking bug when he first released where he would just delete domains. It took all the way up until very recently, version 4.8, which was July of this year, where he finally received his first rerun. That is 14 months of wait in between a 4-star character rerunning a single time, which is kind of absurd. Now for our 5 stars, we are obviously doing even worse. Shenhe's last rerun was back in March of 2023. We are approaching 17 months since we last saw her, and at the absolute earliest, we won't see her until October, since from the livestream we know the current banner is Mualani Kazuha, and the second one is going to be Raiden with Kinich. So 5.1 first half is the absolute earliest we could get Shenhe's rerun. Just to give you a real idea of how long ago it's been since we last seen her, Hoyoverse have released 2 whole games since Shenhe's last banner. Honkai Star Rail, the game that I primarily talk about on this channel, was released in April of 2023. Shenhe, March of 2023. The entirety of the Fontaine region went past, and we got another game from Hoyoverse, Zenless Zone Zero, and guess what? Shenhe still hadn't rerun yet. And for now, we're talking about Kaveh and Shenhe, but these aren't going to be one-off situations. In fact, as more characters release, it's just going to get even worse. Once Shenhe does get her inevitable rerun, Ganyu is right on the horizon with 15 months since her last rerun. And for the 4 stars, Heizo and Mika are both sitting at around the 13 to 14 month mark. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Hoyoverse is killing Genshin Impact by doing this, but I'm pretty sure it is in both their best interest as well as the players' best interest to not have characters start having over a year-long gaps in between reruns. So what are some solutions Hoyo can implement to maybe solve this issue? Well, let's take a look at our 5 stars first. With the current banner structure, we have 4 banners per patch, with 3 characters normally being reruns and 1 normally being a new character. Normally the only time this changes is at the start of a version, so like right now in 5.0, where they might have 2 new characters, and the other opposite end would be the end of a version, where they might not have any new characters being released and just have 4 reruns. Now the most obvious solution is to just have more banners, maybe have 3 banners at a time instead of the 2 we currently have. And the problem with this is the weapon banner. See, the weapon banner in Genshin Impact is not like the ones they have in Star Rail or Zenless, where it's just a single weapon and you either either get it or you lose and you get a standard weapon. In Genshin, they have both limited weapons on the same banner. This means you have 3 options when you're pulling on the weapon banner. You either get the weapon you want, you get the other character's limited weapon, or you get a standard weapon. If a third character were to be thrown in the mix, this doesn't really work. There is a way to do it, but it would screw over the players a lot more, and we also just saw Genshin change the weapon banner, making it a lot more fair for the players. So to see them just throw on a third one very soon doesn't seem like something that would happen. The way I could see them bypass this is to have 4 banners at a time, where now you have 2 weapon banners which are identical to the ones we currently have, but 4 banners at a time is probably a bit overkill for now at least. So I think the best solution to this problem for the 5-star characters at least is to just look at what Genshin has tried already, which is the Chronicle Wish banner. The Chronicled Wish banner showed up in the first half of version 4.5, and it saw 6 characters on the banner paired up with 6 weapons. Now these characters were a mix of limited ones that hadn't been seen in a while, like Eula, Albedo, and Klee, as well as some standard characters, so Mona, Diluc, and Jean. Now the way this banner worked is you selected a character or a weapon you wanted, and then when you pulled, you had a 50-50 to get that character or get something else on the banner. So for example, if you targeted Albedo, when you did get a 5-star, there was a 50% chance you either get Albedo, or if you lost that 50-50, you would get one of the other 5 characters on the banner. And the same thing happens for the weapons. Now, just like your normal limited banner, after you lost, you had a guarantee for the character you chose to aim for. Now, this is by all means Hoyo's solution at fixing the problem they have with character reruns, and they should absolutely just keep going in on this Chronicle Wish banner. We haven't seen it since 4.5, but I think it should hopefully show up at least once in the 5.0 versions, and personally, I would like to see it show up twice. It's just a free way for Hoyo to run a lot of characters at the same time while making it relatively fair for players who want these characters. The first one was also themed, so they had mainly Mondstadt characters on the mix, and I could easily see them doing something similar. Maybe it could be a new Lantern Rite tradition to have a Chronicle Wish banner that features mainly characters from Leeway. So let's leave that part to Hoyo, as I'm sure they already have some stuff planned for the Chronicle Wish banner in the pipeline, and let's talk about the other side, which is the 4-star characters. For our 4-star characters, I think it's really nice for newer players and the more free-to-play community to have them be more accessible. If you just talk about team building in general, if you're a long-time player, you might just be used to having a lot of the really strong 4-stars always available for team building. It's only once you talk to someone who started more recently is where you start to realize that some players just don't have stuff like C4 Xiangling or C1 Bennett, C6 Xingqiu, or even entire copies of characters like Sucrose. And as more characters get released, you start realizing that it gets even harder to get these older characters that are really strong still and are really important for newer players or free-to-play players in team building. So we have a few solutions that Hoyoverse could go for. First one, just add a 4th character on the banner. This doesn't really have that many huge problems. It makes it harder to target specific 4-stars, which is kind of annoying, but if they're feeling nice, they could add a system, so like a pity system where you can target a 4-star while you're pulling on a banner. This should honestly get added regardless of if they add a 4-star on the banner, as some characters like Barazan just really need constellations to be playable. But if they do end up increasing the amount of 4-stars on a banner, this almost feels like a necessity to not screw over players looking to target 4-stars even more than they already are. But overall, this doesn't really bring the same issues as having a third 5-star banner, so I could definitely see them doing this maybe in the future. But the way I think Hoyo seem to be aiming for currently is just to give more 4-stars for free. If you're a long-time player, you might remember being given Barbara, Xiangling, and then Amber, Kai, and Lisa for free. And Noelle as well, I guess, from the beginner wish. But on top of that, now we also have Lynette, Cole, and Kachina that are all free characters that every player can get. With the amount of free 4-stars they're giving now, it doesn't really solve the issue at hand. But if they just start giving more characters, and not from just limited events, but having them permanently for free for new players, I think this issue does kind of get solved a bit. I also think it is absolutely due time for Hoyo to update the Star Glitter exchange in Paimon's Bargains. Right now we have 12 characters that you can get, which is a lot, but all these characters are from the early regions. So characters pretty much from Inazuma onwards don't show up at all. So I think an easy update is to, instead of having 2 characters at a time, just have 3 or 4. That way we don't get rid of the 1.0 characters that people still might need for team building, but we also put the new characters for older players who might want them, or new players who just see these newer characters and think they look cool and want to use them. If something like this was in the game for a character like Kaveh, that whole situation with him just disappearing for over a year wouldn't have happened at all. Genshin's banner system has been pretty perfect for what they've been trying to achieve, but the situation with Kaveh and now Shenhe is showing why it probably needs to undergo a bit of change. The changes I talked about here I think are pretty tame and could honestly happen in the future, but let me know in the comments what you guys think Hoyo might do to help characters not disappear for a year at a time.